It was a bright Tuesday morning at Boston Private Airport when Dr. Maya Richardson pulled up in her modest Honda Civic. She wasn't someone who cared much for fancy cars, preferring to spend her money on medical research and helping others. At 42 years old, Maya had worked incredibly hard to become one of the top neurosurgeons in the country, though you'd never guess it from her humble demeanor. The airport's glass doors slid open as she walked in, rolling her small carry-on suitcase behind her. She wore a simple navy blue blazer, matching pants, and comfortable black flats, her usual professional attire. Her natural hair was neatly styled in a practical bun, and she carried her medical documents in a worn leather briefcase that had been with her since medical school. Time was tight. In exactly 3 hours, a 7-year-old girl in Atlanta needed her help for a complex brain surgery. The private jet was already waiting, chartered by the Atlanta hospital specifically for her. This wasn't about luxury. It was about saving a child's life. As Maya approached the security checkpoint, she noticed how smoothly others were passing through. A white businessman in an expensive suit was waved through with just a quick glance at his ID. A well-dressed white woman right after him got the same easy treatment. Maya took out her identification, her medical license, and her flight documents, already knowing from experience what might come next. The security guard, whose name tag read Tom Whitman, looked up as she approached. He was in his 50s, with graying hair and a face that had probably once been friendly, but now seemed set in permanent suspicion. His eyes narrowed as he saw her, and his whole demeanor changed from the relaxed attitude he'd shown to previous passengers. "May I help you?" Whitman asked, his tone suggesting she might be in the wrong place. "This is the private aviation terminal." "Yes, I know," Maya replied calmly, sliding her documents forward. "I'm Dr. Maya Richardson. I have a private flight to Atlanta scheduled for 8:30 a.m. Whitman picked up her ID with 2 fingers as if it might be fake. "Do you have any additional identification?" Maya had already provided more documentation than anyone else, but she reached into her briefcase and pulled out her hospital ID and medical board certification. "Here you go," she said, keeping her voice steady despite the familiar feeling of frustration rising in her chest. "And who exactly chartered this flight?" Whitman asked, looking past her as if expecting someone else to show up, someone who, in his mind, would look more like they belonged there. "Atlanta Children's Hospital," Maya answered, pulling out the flight charter documents. "I'm needed for emergency pediatric surgery this afternoon." Whitman's eyebrows rose skeptically. "You're saying you're the surgeon?" Around them, the terminal had grown quieter. Other passengers were slowing down to watch the scene unfold. A young airport employee behind the coffee counter was frowning, her hand hovering over her phone, as if debating whether to call someone. "Yes, I am the surgeon," Maya confirmed, pulling out yet another document, her surgical privileges certification. "If you check the flight manifest, you'll see I'm listed as the sole passenger." Whitman made a show of slowly examining each document, holding them up to the light, comparing signatures. Meanwhile, the clock on the wall showed 8:15 a.m. The flight needed to leave in 15 minutes to keep Maya on schedule for the surgery. "These could be copied," Whitman muttered, more to himself than to her. "We get all sorts trying to sneak in here, you know." Maya took a deep breath. In her 20 years of medical practice, she faced this kind of treatment more times than she cared to count. From patients who assumed she was a nurse, to hospital visitors who thought she was part of the cleaning staff, to moments exactly like this one. "Mr. Whitman," she said quietly but firmly, "there's a 7-year-old girl in Atlanta who needs brain surgery. Every minute you delay me here decreases her chances of a full recovery. Now, I provided 6 forms of identification, which is far more than you've asked from any other passenger this morning. Is there something specific you're looking for?" The security guard's face flushed red, but he still didn't move to let her through. Instead, he reached for his radio, presumably to call for backup, making it clear that in his mind, a black woman claiming to be a neurosurgeon with a private flight simply didn't add up. Little did he know, this moment would change not only his life but the entire airport's culture forever. As Whitman reached for his radio, the atmosphere in the terminal grew tense. Maya glanced at her watch again, 8:20 a.m. Her mind wasn't on the guard's discrimination anymore. She was thinking about 7-year-old Sarah Mitchell, lying in a hospital bed in Atlanta, waiting for the surgery that could save her life. The young girl's medical file flashed through Maya's mind. Sarah had a rare brain tumor located in a tricky spot, and most surgeons had refused to operate, calling it too risky. But Maya had developed a special technique for such cases, and she had successfully performed similar surgeries 5 times before. She was Sarah's best hope. While Whitman spoke quietly into his radio, Maya pulled out her phone and saw 3 missed calls from Dr. James Chen, the pediatric doctor in Atlanta. Her hands shook slightly as she dialed them back, turning away from the security desk for some privacy. Dr. Richardson? James answered on the first ring. Where are you? Sarah's parents are asking. I'm having some difficulties at the security checkpoint, Maya explained calmly, though her heart was racing. How is Sarah doing? Her pressure is rising. James replied, his voice tight with worry. We need you here. The backup surgeon isn't comfortable performing this specific procedure. You're the only one who can do it. Maya closed her eyes for a moment. In her mind, she could see Sarah, a bright little girl with dreams of becoming a dancer. Last week, during their video consultation, Sarah had shown Maya her ballet shoes and promised to perform a special dance after she recovered from surgery. Just then, 2 more security guards approached, responding to Whitman's call. One was a younger man who looked uncomfortable with the situation, while the other was a middle-aged woman with a supervisor's badge reading Linda Torres. What seems to be the problem here? Linda asked, looking between Maya and Whitman. Before Whitman could speak, Maya's phone rang again. This time it was Sarah's mother, Mrs. Mitchell. Maya answered it, putting it on speaker so everyone could hear. Dr. Richardson, Mrs. Mitchell's voice cracked with emotion. Please tell me you're on your way. Sarah's symptoms are getting worse. She's having trouble speaking now, and the doctors say... Mrs. Mitchell. Maya cut in gently, her voice carrying the warmth and authority that had comforted countless patients and families before. I want you to know that I'm doing everything in my power to get there. Please tell Sarah to stay strong. I made her a promise, and I intend to keep it. The phone call clearly affected everyone within earshot. Linda Torres stepped forward, her face showing concern. Ma'am, what exactly is going on here? Maya turned to address the supervisor directly. I'm Dr. Maya Richardson, Chief Neurosurgeon at Boston Children's Hospital. I have a private flight waiting to take me to Atlanta for emergency surgery on a 7-year-old girl. Mr. Whitman here seems to have some doubts about my credentials, despite the 6 forms of identification I provided. Linda's eyes widened as she looked at the spread of documents on the security desk. Meanwhile, the younger security guard had pulled out his phone and was quickly typing something. Ma'am, he spoke up suddenly, his face lighting up with recognition. I just Googled Dr. Maya Richardson. She's actually famous. Look. He turned his phone around to show a recent article from Medical Weekly, featuring Maya's photo and highlighting her groundbreaking work in pediatric neurosurgery. The article mentioned her perfect success rate with the very procedure Sarah needed. The color drained from Whitman's face as he realized his mistake. Linda quickly gathered Maya's documents and handed them back to her. Dr. Richardson, I sincerely apologize for this delay, Linda said, shooting a stern look at Whitman. Please, let me escort you to your flight immediately. As they walked quickly toward the private jet terminal, Maya's phone buzzed with another message from Dr. Chen. Sarah's asking for you again. She says she's been practicing her thank you dance in her head. Maya quickened her pace. The incident with Whitman had eaten up precious time, but she refused to let it affect her focus on what really mattered, saving Sarah's life. She had faced obstacles like this throughout her career, but she had never let them stop her from doing what she did best, giving children a second chance at life. Behind her, she could hear Linda starting to reprimand Whitman, but Maya's mind was already in Atlanta, reviewing the surgical procedure step by step. She had a little girl's dance recital to attend, and nothing, not even ignorance and prejudice, was going to stop her from getting there. The private jet terminal buzzed with unexpected activity as Linda Torres rushed Maya toward her flight. But before they could reach the gate, a loud voice rang out across the terminal, stopping everyone in their tracks. Dr. Richardson, please wait. Running toward them was a middle-aged woman in a wheelchair, being pushed by what appeared to be her teenage son. Her face showed desperation and hope as she called out again, Please, you saved my Emily's life last year. Maya turned, instantly recognizing Mrs. Sarah Cooper and her son Jason. Emily, her 10-year-old daughter, had been one of Maya's most challenging cases, a surgery that lasted 14 hours and made medical history. The girl had gone from being completely paralyzed to walking again within 6 months. "Mrs. Cooper," Maya said warmly, though her eyes darted anxiously to her watch. "How is Emily doing?" "She's dancing now," Mrs. Cooper said, tears forming in her eyes. "But that's not why I'm here. I saw what happened with that guard, and I work for Channel 7 News. This story needs to be told." The terminal had grown quiet again, but this time for a different reason. Several passengers had their phones out, recording the scene. Tom Whitman, who had followed at a distance, turned pale as he realized the situation was quickly spiraling beyond his control. Just then, the airport's general manager, Mr. David Chen, came hurrying over. He had been alerted by multiple staff members about the incident. As an Asian American who had faced his own share of discrimination climbing the corporate ladder, he understood the severity of the situation immediately. "Dr. Richardson," he said, slightly out of breath, "I just got off the phone with Atlanta Children's Hospital. They've informed me about the urgency of your surgery. We have a helicopter waiting to make up for lost time." Maya's eyes widened. A helicopter would be faster than the private jet, potentially saving precious minutes. But before she could respond, Mrs. Cooper spoke up again, her journalist instincts kicking in. "Mr. Chen, are you aware that one of your security guards racially profiled a world-renowned surgeon and delayed an emergency surgery for a child?" The terminal erupted in murmurs. Several more people stepped forward, including a businessman who had witnessed the entire scene. "I went through security just before Dr. Richardson," he stated firmly. Whitman barely glanced at my ID, but he questioned every single one of her credentials. "I have it all on video." Maya felt torn. While she appreciated the support, her mind was focused solely on getting to Sarah. Every minute spent here was another minute the little girl had to wait. Sensing her urgency, Mr. Chen took charge. "Mrs. Cooper, I assure you this incident will be thoroughly investigated. But right now, we need to get Dr. Richardson to Atlanta." As if on cue, the young security guard who had Googled Maya earlier stepped forward. "Sir, you should also know that Dr. Richardson developed a special program helping minority students get into medical school. She's inspired hundreds of kids to become doctors." Maya hadn't expected anyone to know about her mentorship program. She kept it quiet, focusing on the work rather than publicity. But now, watching Whitman's face as he learned more about the woman he had profiled, she realized this moment might serve a greater purpose. Linda Torres, who had remained quietly observant, suddenly spoke up. "Mr. Chen, I suggest we use this incident to implement that new training program we discussed last month. And perhaps Dr. Richardson, when she's not saving lives, might consider consulting with us." Maya looked around at all the faces. Mrs. Cooper with her determined expression, Mr. Chen's professional concern, the young guard's earnest support, and even Whitman's growing shame. She thought about Sarah waiting in Atlanta, and all the other children who might face delays in medical care because of prejudice. "I'll help with the training," she said finally, "but right now, there's a little girl who needs surgery. Mr. Chen, please show me to that helicopter." As Maya followed Mr. Chen toward the helipad, she heard Mrs. Cooper talking rapidly into her phone, no doubt calling her news station. Behind them, Linda was already directing Whitman to clear out his locker. The morning sun caught the helicopter's blades as Maya climbed aboard. Despite everything that had happened, she felt a strange sense of peace. Sometimes, she realized, change happened in unexpected ways. Today, she would save Sarah's life, but perhaps she would also help change a few minds and open a few doors for the next generation. The helicopter lifted off, pointing toward Atlanta, carrying not just a surgeon but a catalyst for change. The helicopter sliced through the morning sky, but inside Maya's mind, an unexpected chain of events was unfolding through her phone. Mrs. Cooper's news story had already gone viral, spreading faster than the helicopter could fly. While Maya focused on reviewing Sarah's medical charts on her tablet, her phone kept buzzing with notifications. During the flight, a young flight attendant named Jenny shyly approached with a tablet showing a live stream of what was happening back at Boston Private Airport. The story had exploded into something much bigger than a single incident of discrimination. On the screen, reporters had gathered at the airport, and someone unexpected was speaking. Tom Whitman himself. His face showed genuine remorse as he stood before the cameras, holding up a medical magazine from 3 years ago. I didn't know, his voice cracked with emotion, but I should have. This magazine was sitting in our break room for years. Dr. Richardson was on the cover after she saved those twins that nobody else would operate on. My own nephew was one of those twins. Maya's hand flew to her mouth. She remembered those twins, James and John Peterson, both born with dangerous brain tumors. Their case had been so complex that every hospital had turned them away until they reached her. She hadn't connected Whitman's last name with the Peterson twins. The helicopter pilot called back. Dr. Richardson, Atlanta Children's Hospital, is patching through a video call. On the screen appeared Dr. James Chen, but he wasn't alone. The hospital lobby behind him was filled with people, doctors, nurses, patients, and families. Many held signs reading, "Thank you, Dr. Richardson," and "Heroes come in all colors." "Maya," Dr. Chen said, his face beaming, "you need to see this. These are all families of children you've saved over the years. When they heard about what happened in Boston, they came to show support." The camera panned across the lobby, showing faces Maya recognized. There was Tommy Williams, now a healthy teenager, who she'd operated on when he was just 4. Next to him stood Maria Rodriguez, who had become a pre-med student after Maya saved her sister's life. In the corner, she spotted the Johnson twins, both now pursuing careers in nursing. Back on the Boston livestream, more revelations were coming out. The young security guard who had Googled Maya was speaking now, reading from his phone. Dr. Richardson has performed over 500 successful surgeries on children. She runs a free clinic in underprivileged neighborhoods every Saturday. She's turned down million-dollar offers from private hospitals to stay at Boston Children's Hospital, where she can help any child, regardless of their family's ability to pay. The camera cut to Mr. Chen, the airport manager, making an announcement. "Effective immediately, we're establishing the Richardson rule at all our security checkpoints. Every passenger, regardless of their appearance, will receive the same respectful treatment and verification process." Maya closed her eyes for a moment, overwhelmed. When she opened them, Jenny was still standing there, tears in her eyes. "Dr. Richardson," Jenny said softly, "my little sister wants to be a doctor, but people keep telling her she can't because we're from the Native American reservation. Seeing you today, would you mind if I took a picture to show her?" Before Maya could respond, the pilot announced, "10 minutes to Atlanta. Dr. Richardson, you should see this." Through the helicopter's windshield, Maya could see the hospital helipad coming into view. But what caught her attention was the scene below. Hundreds of people had gathered around the hospital, forming a human chain. From above, she could read the message they spelled out, "Thet ANKUDR, Maya." Her phone buzzed one final time. It was a message from Sarah's mother. "The whole hospital is watching your story. Sarah says she's not scared anymore because her doctor is a real-life superhero." Maya took a deep breath, pushing back tears. This day had started with one man's prejudice, but it was ending with a powerful reminder of why she became a doctor in the first place. Every obstacle she'd faced, every doubt she'd overcome, had led to this moment. The helicopter descended toward the helipad, and Maya's mind shifted fully into surgeon mode. The world might be watching, but right now, all that mattered was Sarah, waiting for her chance to dance again. "Time to get to work," she whispered to herself, gathering her medical bag as the helicopter touched down. Sometimes, she realized, it takes a moment of darkness to reveal just how much light one person can bring into the world. The moment Maya stepped off the helicopter, she was greeted by a team of nurses already dressed in surgical scrubs. Time was precious, and they moved with practiced efficiency. Dr. James Chen met her at the elevator, tablet in hand, ready to brief her on Sarah's latest condition. "Her pressure has stabilized," he reported as they rushed down the hallway. "We kept her calm by showing her videos of your other patients who recovered. She's been incredibly brave." Outside Sarah's room, Maya paused to look through the window. The 7-year-old girl lay in her hospital bed, clutching her favorite ballet shoes. Despite her condition, Sarah managed a weak smile when she saw Maya. Next to her bed, her parents stood up, relief washing over their tired faces. Maya entered the room, her calm presence immediately changing the atmosphere. "Hello, Sarah. I hear you've been practicing your dance moves in your head." Sarah's face lit up. "Dr. Maya, I saw you on TV just now. Those mean people at the airport didn't know your magic. Maya sat on the edge of Sarah's bed, taking the girl's small hand in hers. While she checked Sarah's vital signs, she spoke softly. You know what, Sarah? There's a special kind of magic that happens when we don't let other people's mistakes stop us from doing what's right. Sarah's mother wiped tears from her eyes. Dr. Richardson, we saw what happened in Boston. We can't believe you still made it here despite everything. Mrs. Mitchell, Maya interrupted gently. Right now, the only thing that matters is getting Sarah ready for her dance recital. Now, young lady, she turned back to Sarah, shall we talk about our plan? As Maya explained the surgery in simple terms Sarah could understand, her phone silently lit up with messages. The incident at Boston Airport had sparked a national conversation. Hashtag Dr. Richardson was trending on social media, with thousands sharing their own stories of facing discrimination in professional settings. But Maya's focus remained entirely on Sarah. She walked the family through each step of the procedure, answering their questions with patience and clarity. When she finished, Sarah had one more question. Dr. Maya, were you scared when that guard was mean to you? The room grew quiet. Maya thought carefully before answering, knowing her words mattered not just to Sarah, but to everyone who would hear this story. No, Sarah, I wasn't scared. You know why? Because I was thinking about you. When you have something important to do, something that can help others, you can't let fear or anger slow you down. Just like you're not letting this tumor stop you from dancing. Sarah's father, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. You know, my grandfather was a janitor at a hospital. They wouldn't let him walk through the front door because of his color. Today, I'm watching a brilliant black woman surgeon save my daughter's life. He would have been so proud to see this day. Just then, Dr. Chen appeared at the door. Or is ready, Dr. Richardson. Maya stood up, switching fully into surgeon mode. But before leaving, she had one more thing to say to Sarah. When you wake up, I want you to remember something important. Those ballet shoes you're holding, they remind me of my first stethoscope. People told me I couldn't be a doctor, just like maybe someone told you that ballet wasn't for little girls like you. But here you are, and here I am. Now, let's prove them all wrong together. As the nurses prepared to move Sarah to surgery, Maya quickly checked her phone one last time. There was a new message from Tom Whitman at Boston Airport. Dr. Richardson, I didn't realize until today that you were the surgeon who saved my nephew John. He walks and plays because of you. My ignorance almost prevented another child from receiving your gift. I will spend the rest of my career making sure this never happens to anyone else. The airport's new training program starts tomorrow, and I'm asking to be the first to take it. Maya slipped her phone away and walked toward the operating room. Behind her, she could hear Sarah telling her parents, When I grow up, I want to be just like Dr. Maya, helping people and being brave. In the surgical prep room, Maya washed her hands methodically, her mind clear and focused. Today had shown her that change could come from unexpected places. But right now, her only thought was of Sarah and the dance recital they had promised each other. As she stepped into the operating room, Maya felt stronger than ever. Sometimes, the best response to prejudice wasn't anger or resignation, but simply continuing to excel, to save lives, to make a difference, one patient at a time. Scalpel, she said confidently, ready to help another child dance toward their dreams. 6 hours into Sarah's surgery, the tension in the operating room was thick but focused. Maya's hands moved with precise grace, her years of experience guiding each careful movement. The gallery above the operating room, usually empty during procedures, was filled with medical students and doctors, all watching in respectful silence as history unfolded. Tumor extraction complete, Maya announced, her voice steady despite the hours of intense concentration. The OR staff let out a collective breath they hadn't realized they were holding. But Maya wasn't finished. She had promised Sarah a perfect dance recital, and that meant ensuring every last detail was perfect. While Maya worked, the world outside the operating room had erupted in unexpected ways. The story of what happened at Boston Airport had sparked a movement. Hashtag Healing Hands and hashtag Dream Color were trending worldwide. Major hospitals across the country were announcing new anti-discrimination policies. In the OR waiting room, Sarah's parents sat surrounded by supporters. Local ballet schools had sent dancers in tutus to wait with them, A group of young black and minority medical students had arrived, quietly studying for their boards while waiting to hear about the surgery's outcome. Back in Boston, Tom Whitman was giving his first interview to Mrs. Cooper from Channel 7 News. His voice shook as he spoke about his transformation. "I've been a security guard for 20 years," he said, "and I thought I knew what a doctor looked like. Today, I learned that excellence doesn't have a specific face. Dr. Richardson saved my nephew years ago, and my prejudice almost stopped her from saving another child." The interview was being played on a small TV in the waiting room. Sarah's mother watched through tears as Whitman continued. "My nephew John is applying to medical school now, inspired by Dr. Richardson. When I called him today to confess what I'd done, he told me she was the reason he wanted to become a doctor. I almost let my bias stop another child from having that same inspiration." In the operating room, Maya was unaware of the waves she was creating. Her world had narrowed to the microscopic movements required to ensure Sarah's future. Dr. Chen, assisting in the surgery, watched in awe as she navigated the complex procedure with almost supernatural precision. "Blood pressure stable," a nurse announced. "Brain activity normal." Outside the hospital, news vans had gathered. The story had evolved beyond one of discrimination. It had become a testament to excellence overcoming prejudice, of dedication defeating ignorance. Parents were calling the hospital, asking how their children could become doctors like Dr. Richardson. 7 hours in, Maya finally looked up from the operating table. "We're done," she said simply. "Sarah's going to dance again." The gallery erupted in applause, but Maya was already focused on the next steps, giving detailed post-operative instructions to the recovery team. As she finally stepped out of the OR, exhausted but satisfied, she was surprised to find the hallway lined with people. Hospital staff, patients, visitors, all stood in respectful silence as she walked past. At the end of the hallway, a group of young black girls in white coats stood with handmade signs. "Future Dr. Richardson," and "Dreams don't discriminate." Maya stopped to speak with them, despite her exhaustion. "Who are you all?" she asked gently. A small girl, no older than 12, stepped forward. "We're from the science club at Martin Luther King Jr. Middle School. When we heard your story, our teacher brought us here. We want to be doctors too." Before Maya could respond, her phone buzzed with a message from Boston Airport. Mr. Chen, the manager, had assembled all the security staff for an emergency training session. The photo showed Whitman at the front of the room, tears in his eyes, holding up a picture of his nephew John and telling their story. The message read, "The Richardson Rule is now official policy. Every passenger will be treated with equal respect and dignity. Your experience is changing lives beyond medicine." As Maya walked toward the recovery room to check on Sarah, she passed the hospital's main lobby. On the wall hung a large mirror, and for a moment, she caught her reflection, still in her surgical scrubs, her face showing the strain of the long surgery. But behind her, reflected in the same mirror, were the young girls from the science club, watching her with shining eyes. At that moment, Maya understood that today's events weren't just about one surgery or one incident of discrimination. It was about showing everyone, especially these young dreamers, that excellence couldn't be stopped by prejudice, that determination could overcome any barrier. Sarah would dance again, and these girls would become doctors. That was the real healing that had happened today. 3 weeks after Sarah's surgery, Maya sat in the front row of the Little Stars Dance Academy's special recital. The small auditorium was packed, not just with proud parents, but with news cameras, medical staff, and a surprising number of airport security personnel, including Tom Whitman and his nephew John. Sarah stood backstage, her ballet shoes perfectly tied, nervous energy radiating from her small frame. The tumor that had threatened to take away her ability to walk, let alone dance, was gone. Her recovery had been remarkable, exceeding even Maya's optimistic expectations. "Ladies and gentlemen," the dance instructor announced, "tonight we have a very special performance. 3 weeks ago, Sarah Mitchell couldn't walk. Today, she's going to dance for us, thanks to the incredible Dr. Maya Richardson." The spotlight found Sarah as she stepped onto the stage. She wore a pale blue tutu, her hair pulled back in a perfect ballet bun. A thin surgical scar was barely visible at her hairline, Maya's precise work ensuring it would fade almost completely with time. As the music began, Tchaikovsky's Dance of the Sugar Plum Fairy, Sarah started to move. Her first steps were careful, determined. Then, as confidence filled her small body, her movements became more graceful, more assured. Maya watched, tears filling her eyes, remembering the girl who had clutched those same ballet shoes in her hospital bed just weeks ago. In the audience, Tom Whitman sat with his nephew John. The young man was holding his medical school acceptance letter. He'd been admitted to Boston University Medical School, where Maya was a visiting professor. His personal essay about Dr. Richardson's impact on his life had moved the admissions committee deeply. Halfway through Sarah's performance, something unexpected happened. The young girl paused in her routine and walked to the edge of the stage. She picked up a second pair of ballet shoes, adult-sized ones, and walked them over to Maya. "Dr. Maya," Sarah spoke into the microphone someone handed her. "You promised to dance with me when I got better. Will you please dance with me now?" The audience held their breath. Maya looked at the ballet shoes, then at Sarah's hopeful face. She hadn't danced ballet since she was a teenager, choosing medical books over dance recitals. But some promises were too important to break. Taking off her professional heels, Maya slipped on the ballet shoes. As she stood beside Sarah on stage, the young girl whispered, "Don't worry, Dr. Maya. Just like you told me before surgery, we can do anything if we're brave enough to try." Together, they danced. Maya followed Sarah's lead, their movements synchronized, a beautiful testament to healing and hope. The audience watched in awe as doctor and patient moved across the stage, their dance telling a story of recovery, resilience, and dreams reborn. In the back of the auditorium, Mrs. Cooper from Channel 7 News wiped tears from her eyes as she recorded the moment. Her original story about discrimination at the airport had evolved into something far more powerful, a series about breaking barriers in medicine, inspired by Dr. Richardson's example. As the dance ended, Sarah threw her arms around Maya's waist. The audience erupted in applause, but Maya's attention was caught by something else. A group of young girls in the second row, all wearing small white doctor coats. They were from various backgrounds: Black, Hispanic, Asian, Native American, and they held up a banner that read, "Thanks for showing us the way, Dr. Richardson." Later that evening, as Maya gathered her things to leave, Sarah's father approached her with news. "The video of your dance with Sarah has gone viral," he said, showing her his phone. "People are calling it the healing dance. But look at the comments." Maya scrolled through hundreds of messages from young girls and their parents, all sharing dreams of becoming doctors, all thanking her for showing them it was possible. There were also messages from other professionals who had faced discrimination, finding courage in her story. The last comment made her pause. It was from Tom Whitman. "Today I watched my nephew get accepted to medical school and saw a young girl dance because Dr. Richardson refused to let anyone stop her from helping others. Real change happens one heart at a time." As Maya drove home that night, she thought about Sarah's words on stage, about being brave enough to try. In just a few weeks, a terrible moment of discrimination had transformed into a movement of hope and change. Sarah was dancing again, young girls were dreaming of medical careers, and even those who once doubted were learning to see with new eyes. Sometimes, Maya realized, the greatest success stories start with someone simply refusing to be stopped. 1 year later, Maya stood in the lobby of Boston Private Airport, but everything was different now. A large photograph hung on the wall, Sarah in mid-dance leap beside a smiling Maya, with a plaque that read "The Richardson Rule: Excellence knows no boundaries." Below it sat Tom Whitman at a new desk marked Diversity and Inclusion Training Coordinator. Today was special. The airport was hosting its first Dreams Take Flight program, an initiative that Tom had helped create. 50 young students from underserved communities were about to take their first ever flight, each paired with a mentor in their dream career. "Dr. Richardson," Tom called out, standing to greet her. He no longer wore a security guard's uniform, but instead a neat business suit with a pin that read "Change starts with me. The kids are so excited to meet you." Maya smiled, remembering how different their last encounter had been. Tom had transformed his moment of shame into a mission for change. Under his leadership, the airport's security staff had become a model for inclusive practices nationwide. Sarah was there too, now 8 years old and fully recovered. She had become a regular visitor to the airport. teaching ballet to employees' children in the new community center Tom had helped establish. Today, she wore both her ballet shoes and a kid-sized white doctor's coat. She had decided she wanted to be a dancing doctor, just like Dr. Maya. "The first group is here," Sarah announced excitedly as buses pulled up outside. The arriving children filled the terminal with wide-eyed wonder. Among them was a young black girl named Destiny, who clutched a toy stethoscope. When she saw Maya, her eyes grew even wider. "Are you really her?" Destiny whispered. "The doctor who danced?" Maya knelt down to Destiny's level. "I am, and I hear you want to be a doctor too." "Yes, but..." Destiny looked down at her shoes. "My teacher said it's really hard." "Let me show you something," Maya said, leading Destiny to a new wall display. It showed photographs of recent medical school graduates, many of them inspired by Maya's story. Among them was John, Tom's nephew, now in his first year of residency. The wall also featured newspaper clippings. The headline, "Airport Incident Leads to National Change," was prominent, alongside stories of other hospitals and institutions adopting their own versions of the Richardson Rule. But what caught Destiny's eye was a collection of children's drawings, all showing doctors of different colors healing people. "Those are from Sarah's classmates," Maya explained. "They learned that doctors can look like anyone who dreams big enough." Just then, a familiar face appeared. Mrs. Cooper from Channel 7 News, now a regular supporter of the Dreams Take Flight program. She was filming a follow-up to her original story, documenting how one incident of discrimination had sparked a nationwide movement for change. "Dr. Richardson," Mrs. Cooper smiled. "Did you ever imagine that morning would lead to all this?" Maya looked around the transformed terminal. Where there had once been suspicion and prejudice, there was now hope and possibility. The security checkpoints had been redesigned to be more welcoming, with signs in multiple languages and staff trained in cultural sensitivity. Near the front desk, Sarah was teaching Destiny and other children a simple ballet move, their laughter echoing through the terminal. Tom watched from his desk, the pride evident on his face as he saw how his worst mistake had become his greatest opportunity for growth. "The real legacy," Maya told Mrs. Cooper, "isn't just about changing policies or breaking barriers. It's about showing every child that their dreams deserve to take flight." As if to emphasize her point, the airport's intercom crackled to life. A young voice, one of the students participating in the program, made the announcement. "Good morning, Boston Private Airport. This is future pilot Maria Rodriguez speaking. Welcome to a place where everyone's dreams can soar." Maya felt a tug on her coat. It was Destiny again, holding up her toy stethoscope. "Dr. Maya, will you teach me how to use this properly? I want to start practicing now." As Maya showed Destiny how to listen to a heartbeat, she caught her reflection in the terminal's window. Behind her, she could see the next generation of doctors, pilots, engineers, and dancers, all starting their journeys in a place that had learned to see beyond prejudice to possibility. The Richardson Rule had become more than just an airport policy. It had become a reminder that sometimes the greatest legacies come from our hardest moments. And that change, like healing, begins with a single brave heart willing to show others the way.